Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so thrilled you're here today because we're tackling a genuinely fascinating challenge in the gaming industry. Think about it. How do you take a concept as broad and honestly as seemingly subjective as responsible gaming and turn it into hard, cold, auditable data? Well, today we're zooming in on the exact math and the standardized metrics used by the world's biggest casinos and online gaming platforms to actually prove their compliance. Right, so this is the core problem. If you're an ESG investor, environmental, social, and governance, or maybe you're a compliance officer or a regulator, you already know that casinos absolutely have to manage problem gambling. But here's the catch. You can't just take a company's word for it, right? You can't just rely on a slick PR statement or good intentions. You need an objective number. You need to know exactly how much of their operation is genuinely shielded by best practices, and you've got to calculate that responsibility in a way that prevents literally anyone from gaming the system. So here's our flight path for today. We'll start with the responsible gaming mandate, then we'll unpack the SASB metrics themselves. After that, we'll do a quick math walkthrough for both physical venues and online operations. And finally, we'll wrap up with why this math actually matters in the real world. Let's dive in. All right, starting us off, Section 1, the responsible gaming mandate. To really understand why the gaming industry faces such intense scrutiny in the first place, we have to look at the stark reality laid out by the SSB standard. Look, gambling is entertainment, sure, but the industry faces massive risks related to pathological and problem gambling. Now, pathological gambling is a progressive addiction, and problem gambling is a slightly less severe but still incredibly serious form of it. Obviously, casinos don't cause the problem gambling, but they do provide the opportunity, and frankly, they can earn disproportionately greater revenue from these specific individuals. So if an operator drops the ball, if they allow minors to gamble, violate self-exclusion lists, or run completely irresponsible advertising, those highly publicized incidents, they lead to massive reputational damage and, crucially, the regulatory curtailment of their licenses. And let's be real, without a license, there's no business. Moving right along to Section 2, the SASB metrics explained. So, how on earth do we measure an operator's efforts to actually mitigate those massive risks? Well, to get standard data, we look to the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB. And just a quick side note, as of August 2022, the International Sustainability Standards Board of the IFRS Foundation actually took over responsibility for these standards. This right here is the standardized playbook used all over the globe to assess sustainability-related risks that hit a company's cash flows and cost of capital. They essentially give us the exact formulas operators have to use to report their compliance. If we look at the official SASB standard table, you'll see specific codes for responsible gaming. We've got SV-CA-260a.1, which evaluates physical facilities, and SV-CA-260a.2, which evaluates online operations. Now, pay attention here, because the absolute key to this whole framework is hiding in the unit of measure column. It doesn't just ask for a simple percentage of compliance. No, it requires a percentage by revenue. That little phrase right there, by revenue, is the absolute linchpin to this entire framework. We're going to see exactly how that works in just a second. But real quick, what exactly are they complying with? The SASB standards mandate using the Responsible Gambling Council, or RGC, standards and criteria. These are super rigorous criteria developed by the RGC Center for the Advancement of Best Practices. And as we saw, SASB clearly splits this into two distinct metrics. SV-CA-260a.1 is for physical venues, so your traditional brick-and-mortar establishments where gaming equipment operates for business revenue. And SV-CA-260a.2, that covers iGaming, or all the online operations. And honestly, this is what makes the SASB framework so elegant. Think about it. You've got two completely different environments, right? A massive, sprawling riverboat casino is obviously managed way differently than a sleek betting app on your phone. Yet, the underlying mathematical logic that SASB mandates to assess their responsible gaming compliance, it's the exact same three-step formula. It's brilliant. Okay, let's get into the numbers. Section 3, a math walkthrough for physical venues. To make this super easy to digest, let's invent a fictional operator. We'll call them Jackpot Enterprises. For their physical venues, they have to follow this strict three-step formula required by SV-CA-260a.1. Step 1, for every single facility you own, calculate the percentage of the RGC core standards it actually meets. Step 2, calculate a weighting factor for that specific facility. You do this by taking the revenue from that facility and dividing it by your company's total revenue across all your gaming facilities. Finally, step 3, multiply the percentage of criteria you achieved by that weighting factor, and then simply add those up across all your properties. Simple enough, right? Let's visualize this. Jackpot Enterprises owns 2 physical properties. They have this massive flagship mega resort that generates a whopping 80% of their total physical venue revenue. But they also own a smaller side venue that brings in the remaining 20%. So, based on step 2, their weighting factors are 0.8 and 0.2. Now for the fun part, let's run the math. Take a look at the side venue row first. They nailed it here, 100% compliance with the RGC criteria. Awesome job, right? But wait, its revenue weight is only 20%, so 100% multiplied by 0.2 gives us a weighted score of 20%. Now look at the mega resort. They totally slacked off here and only met 50% of the RGC criteria. Because this monster property represents 80% of their revenue, we multiply that 50% by 0.8, which gives us 40%. Add those together and Jackpot Enterprises' final reported metric is just 60%. This is absolutely crucial. A company cannot just point to some tiny, perfectly compliant property to distract regulators from poor practices at their massive moneymaker. The revenue weight drags the absolute truth right into the light. All right, on to section 4, the math walkthrough for online operations. So let's run that exact same exercise for their digital footprint. First up, we need to know what we're actually measuring. Under metric SV-CA-260a.1, SASB defines online games as any entity owned or operated online platforms that enable individuals to place, receive, or otherwise knowingly transmit a bet or wager. Basically, if Jackpot Enterprises runs it and you can place a bet on it, it goes into the calculation, period. Okay, let's say Jackpot Enterprises operates 2 websites. Platform A is their huge, super popular site bringing in 90% of their online revenue. They've invested heavily in doing things right and met 100% of the RGC iGaming criteria. So 100% times that massive 0.9 weight gives us 90%. Now, Platform B is this clunky, outdated site generating only 10% of the revenue, and it literally meets 0 criteria. 0% times a 0.1 weight is, well, 0. Sum those up, and their final online score is 90%. Because they rigorously protected their primary revenue stream with stellar compliance, their overall score stays very high, which signals a much lower risk profile for investors. And that brings us to our final section, why the math matters. So why go through all this trouble of weighting everything by revenue? Let's quickly look back at that 60% score from Jackpot Enterprises' physical venues. Think about it. If they didn't have to weight their score by revenue, they could just throw up their hands and say, hey, we have 2 properties, and one of them is 100% compliant. We're doing great. But that 60% tells a wildly different story. It clearly reveals that the vast majority of the actual money flowing into this business is only half protected by responsible gaming standards. So to sum up what you should really take away from all this mathematical framework absolutely prevents greenwashing. You just cannot mask poor compliance at your flagship properties anymore. It reveals a company's genuine risk exposure to investors because the compliance is permanently tethered to the cash flow. It also standardizes reporting. That means you can compare a company with 50 tiny casinos against a company with 2 giant mega resorts on a completely even playing field. Oh, and a quick side note directly from the SASB text, companies are actually permitted to use an equivalent standard to the RGC as long as they disclose what that alternative is. So the framework stays flexible but totally transparent. I want to leave you with one final thought today. Whether you're out there analyzing a gaming stock or helping design regulatory policy, does your portfolio's biggest earner carry your biggest compliance risk? Because as the SASB standards prove, trying to measure someone's good intentions is practically impossible. But if you follow the revenue, the math will always give you the answer. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking those hard questions.